Hello, class. My name is Jim Toot, and I'm an Associate Professor of Political Science at Central Virginia Community College. In this video, we'll discuss the courts, Part 3, Selecting Federal Judges. The President nominates all federal judges who must then be approved by the Senate. The appointments of judges to the lower federal courts are important because almost all federal cases end there. Once in office, federal judges can be removed only by impeachment and conviction. Unless compelled to retire due to illness or incapacity, or resign, judges may time their departures so that their replacements are appointed by a president who shares their political views and policy preferences. In nominating Supreme Court justices, presidents seek to satisfy their political, policy, and personal goals. They do not always succeed. Sometimes justices change their views over time or may surprise the president from the start. "Biggest damn fool mistake I ever made," said President Dwight D. Eisenhower about his appointment of Chief Justice Earl Warren, who led the Supreme Court's liberal decisions on civil rights and criminal procedure. The following are some of the other factors that can influence presidents' choices of Supreme Court nominees. The Senate composition. Timing. The closer to an upcoming presidential election the appointment occurs, the more necessary it is to appoint a highly qualified, non-controversial figure acceptable to the Senate. Public approval of the president. The higher the president's approval ratings, the more nominating leeway the president has, and the approval of special interest groups. Nominations go to the Senate Judiciary Committee, which usually holds hearings. Whether senators should concern themselves with anything more than the nominee's professional qualifications is often debated. Arguably, nothing in the Constitution, historical experience, political practice, ethical norms, or statutory enactments prohibits senators from asking questions that reveal judicial nominees' views on political and ideological issues. The next step is for the Judiciary Committee to vote on whether or not to send the nomination to the Senate floor. If it reaches the floor, senators can then vote to confirm or reject the nomination, or filibuster so that the vote is delayed or does not take place. Fewer than half of the recent nominees to the Federal Appeals Court have been confirmed. Presidents have opportunities to nominate Supreme Court justices very infrequently, so the media provide intensive coverage of every stage of the nomination, from the time an incumbent justice leaves office until a replacement is confirmed by the Senate. The scrutiny is not necessarily damaging. President Clinton's nominees, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer, enjoyed Senate confirmation votes of 97-3 and 87-9, respectively. Sometimes the media determine a nominee's fate. President Reagan's nominee, Douglas H. Ginsburg, withdrew when news stories reported that he had smoked marijuana with some of his Harvard Law School students. The media were also intimately involved in the fate of Robert H. Bork and Clarence Thomas, particularly through the coverage of the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings. The failed nomination of Robert H. Bork. Bork was a distinguished lawyer who had taught at Yale University, served as Solicitor General and Acting Attorney General of the United States, and was a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. He opposed civil rights laws and such Supreme Court decisions as Roe v. Wade allowing abortion. More than 300, mostly liberal interest groups, publicly opposed him. The nominee, touted by his supporters as urbane, witty, and brilliant, contributed to his demise by the impression he made on national television during 5 contentious days, during which he candidly testified about his legal and political philosophy, defended his views on issues and cases. Bork was outmaneuvered by his opponents on the committee, who came up with such sound bites featured on the evening news as, "You are not a frightening man, but you are a man with frightening views." The Senate rejected the nomination on October 23, 1987, by a vote of 58 to 42. The process generated a new verb in politics, to bork, which means to unleash a lobbying and public relations campaign using and facilitated by the media. A similar attack was waged against Clarence Thomas in the fall of 1991. The White House and the nominee's defenders were ready with a highly organized public relations campaign. President George H.W. Bush nominated Thomas for the seat of Thurgood Marshall. Both were African Americans. But in contrast to the liberal Marshall, Thomas was a conservative Republican. The nomination was opposed by leaders of liberal and feminist organizations and supported by conservatives. It divided the civil rights community, which wanted an African American justice, but not Thomas. Law professor Anita Hill accused Thomas of having engaged in sexual improprieties when she worked for him at the Department of Education and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. With the salacious accusations, media coverage skyrocketed, especially when the hearings reopened featuring Hill's testimony and Thomas's rebuttal. In the end, most senators voted as they had been leaning prior to Hill's testimony, and Thomas was confirmed by a vote of 52 to 48. In July 2005, President George W. Bush made the first Supreme Court nomination in 11 years. He chose John H. Roberts, Jr., a federal appeals court judge on the D.C. Circuit, to replace the moderate Republican Sandra Day O'Connor, who was retiring. Roberts was then nominated to be Chief Justice after the death of incumbent William H. Rehnquist. During the 3 days of testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee, the erudite and engaging Roberts deflected questions by comparing judges to umpires and saying that he would be guided by the law. On September 29, 2005, the Republican-controlled Senate approved him as Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court by a vote of 78 to 22. Bush next turned to fill Sandra Day O'Connor's vacancy. He was under pressure, even in public statements from his wife, to appoint a woman to succeed O'Connor. He nominated his White House general counsel and close friend Harriet Miers. She had never served as a judge and had little experience on constitutional matters, and held very few reported positions on important issues. Conservatives, including office holders, interest group leaders, columnists, pundits, and bloggers, rejected the president's assurance that she was a candidate that they could trust. Leaders of the Senate Judiciary Committee rejected her answers to their questions as inadequate, insufficient, and insulting. Senators expressed doubts to the news media about her qualifications and knowledge of the Constitution. After 24 days of a ferocious barrage of criticism, all reported and amplified by the media, Ms. Miers withdrew from consideration. President Bush then nominated a federal appeals court judge, Samuel A. Alito, Jr. The judge had a record from his time in the Reagan administration and from 15 years of judicial decisions of deferring to the executive branch, favoring business, and rejecting abortion rights. In testifying before the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Judge Alito followed the stonewalling script. Nothing he said could be used against him by Democratic senators on the committee or by the media. A dramatic moment in his favor shown on television occurred when his wife, upset by the questioning directed at him, walked out of the hearing in tears. Soon after the hearings, Judge Alito was approved by 58 to 42. When Justice Souter resigned from the court, President Obama, making his first nomination, picked Sonia Sotomayor to replace him. Her confirmation hearings in July 2009 followed the script that had worked for Roberts and Alito. She refused to opine about cases or identify a judicial philosophy other than fidelity to the law. Sotomayor would be the first Hispanic and third woman ever appointed to the court. She would not change its ideological balance, and there were no media revelations to derail her prospects. Since the Democrats had 60 votes in the Senate, it came as no surprise that she was confirmed by a vote of 68 to 31. A similar pattern followed the resignation of Justice John Paul Stevens. Obama's nominee, Solicitor General and former Dean of the Harvard Law School, Elena Kagan, was unlikely to change the ideological balance of the court. She, too, largely stonewalled the hearings and was confirmed by the Senate on August 5, 2010, by a vote of 63 to 37. On February 1, 2017, President Donald Trump nominated Neil Gorsuch to be an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court to fill the seat left vacant after the death of Justice Antonin Scalia 11 months earlier, after announcing the nomination the previous day. Gorsuch is a proponent of textualism in statutory interpretation and originalism in interpreting the U.S. Constitution. The hearings are scheduled to begin on this nomination on March 20th, 2017. In summary, presidents usually look to nominate as federal judges people who share their ideological, policy, and partisan views. Nominations attract intense scrutiny from interest groups and the media and can be controversial and contentious. They are subject to confirmation by the Senate, which may delay, block, or approve them. We explain why the nominations of Robert H. Bork and Harriet Miers failed, and why those of Clarence Thomas, John G. Roberts, Samuel A. Alito, Jr., Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan were successful.